Wednesday evening, everybody. I'm Therien, former Philadelphia Flyer. We're joined here again on a regular Wednesday night. We were running the Sports Medicine Forum, and I'm going to tell you, really thrilled. Me and Jimmy have been doing this. Flyers head trainer for the National Hockey League's our Philadelphia Flyers. This week, though, great guest. Of course, really don't need much of an intro for you.
Go ahead, take it time.
It is the great Ron Jaworski, and I can sit here and tell you a million things about Ron because I got it all written down. But most of us know former Super Bowl quarterback, went to the Super Bowl with the Eagles, Youngstown State graduate and Hall of Fame in 1986, drafted by the Rams in the second round, and then he went on to nothing but greatness in that 1980 season, carried him through generations here in Philadelphia, named the NFL Player of the Year that year. Maxwell Football Club Professional Player of the Year. And this is Dallas week, Ron.
That is right.
We have to tell you that. And Ron did beat the Dallas Cowboys 20-7 in the NFC Championship game that year. Great to see you here, buddy. And I know we're going to talk some injury stuff in the NFL and a couple old guys. You're older, maybe, just a little bit.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me. And if you want to talk injuries, I'm the right guy. I've had them all.
So that is what we're going to do. And we're going to pass the mic down, but a lot of it really, so I know we were talking beforehand, this week is a little bit more specific. We're not really nailing down one particular injury. We've dealt with ACLs, we've dealt with wrists, ankles. This week is really because of the pandemic. We've been put in a unique situation where players have been asked to come out and compete in their leagues in a totally different format than what we've seen in the past. You know, guys go through training camps. Hockey players have their traditional September camp. NFL players have mini camps with the August camp followed by exhibition games. How much of that has led to some of the injuries? And Jimmy, there's been a lot of them, right? I mean, there's been a flurry of guys. Just going down the list here, just in the NFL now. Dak Prescott, Andy Dalton, both Dallas quarterbacks, more in Dallas a week. And then you got Odell Beckham, Von Miller, and Sammy Watkins, all-star players in the NFL that are suffering injuries. Ron, do you think it's right now, just with your sport football, is it because of the lack of camp and the lack of preparation that they've had for this season?
Chris, no doubt. You know, I'm a big believer in training and getting in shape and all those things, but there's a certain way you have to do it. And all these players came to quote-unquote training camp in shape, but not football shape. And there is a difference. You know, if you play hockey and you're training for hockey, you know, guys come to camp, oh man, they're ready. They're weight, you know, body fat, everything's fine. But until you start having that contact, your body's not used to it. And if you look at the NFL this season, there was no off-season conditioning program with the team. You were on your own, at your own gym, your own facility, and most guys spend 3 months in their home city where they play with their training staff, with their medical staff, so they're watching them all the time. No training camp, no preseason games. So the first actual physical contact was the first regular season game. So yes, the players are in great physical shape, well conditioned, but you're not ready for contact. I think it's a reason we've seen so many injuries this year in the National Football League. They're not prepared for the contact and the brutality of the National Football League.
Jimmy, is that different? I know you dealt with the Flyers. You were actually in one of the bubbles, the NFL, Major League Baseball, until they got to the playoffs, remained pretty much out in the open. You guys were in the bubble and had a mini training camp in Philadelphia before heading to Toronto. How was that for you guys in terms of a reset 2.0 to the season?
First, I want to say that I agree with Ron 100%.
Yeah.
That if you can come into camp in the best shape, but if you're not in football shape, if you're not in hockey shape, you're setting yourself up for the kill. We were fortunate enough to play 72 games, have some time off, but the boys knew that that the league was looking to come back and play, and so they took a few weeks off, then got right back into it. And you know what it's like, because you're out there practicing with, well, all the leagues were shut down, so they were practicing with NHL players, AHL players, and junior league players, and they were keeping themselves in hockey shape. We came back early or mid-July, I'm sorry. We had a 3-week training camp. First week, Elaine Vigneault didn't take it easy, but it was rigorous, and then he bumped it up. That third week, it was like we knew we were preparing to go in and get right back into the playoffs, which were the bubble was. We did have 2 exhibition games up there, which helped out a lot. we were playing, we were already in, so we were that reshuffling the deck of the top four. And not that those games are any less meaningful, but we weren't trying to play our way into the competition.
Right.
And so we had like 3 exhibition games up there where other teams didn't. And I think it really helped us immensely and cut down on the amount of injuries, because you both played the sport, football and hockey. I truly believe that the healthiest team going into the playoffs stands the best chance.
Yeah. You know, Josh, when I came in, it was the summer. I played in the Olympic team in '93 for Canada. I came to the Flyers in '94 from college. That was really, I felt, and I think Jimmy might concur, that was probably the beginning of the true year-round training in and around that time. About the mid-'90s is when you saw guys start to make the shift to train. More money was becoming prevalent. Guys were really trying to go for that grab. But what was that like in the off-season? I talked to Bob Clark, or guys, Dave Schultz. There was no training camp was there for that reason, to get in shape for camp. What was that like? I mean, you're going back in the mid-'70s and when you started coming out. I mean, how was it then?
I can actually give you some real-life stories. See, I have an office at NFL Films, and Steve Sable, God rest his soul, ran NFL Films. He always loved telling stories. He always tell a story. So I started my career in 1973 out in Los Angeles with the Rams. And about midway through the season, they had this old garage at Blair Field where we used to practice. And the big truck pulls in, and they brought in all this Nautilus equipment. You might remember the Nautilus, Jimmy? This was like earth-shattering. This new equipment. Then it was barbells and dumbbells. And wow, we had this state-of-the-art Nautilus equipment. So 4 years later, I get traded to Philadelphia. In the basement of Veterans Stadium, there was a room. And that room just had some free weights in it, things like that. Well, Dick Vermeil made a deal with Domidio Brothers, which is a lumberyard. Yeah. And they came in and fitted out this concrete wall room. And we're all going to coach, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, we got new equipment coming. So it was like a big thing. This is 1977, this new training equipment, all of a sudden things not getting computerized. It was a big move. And it was about that time, late 70s, where it became year-round training. The season would end, guys would go home for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You'd come back, and there was no collective bargaining agreement at that time where you couldn't train. I mean, coaches, we were working out. We practiced every single day in the off-season, throwing balls, running routes. So it has really evolved. But the number one thing though was getting in physical shape in the off-season, then get ready for the physical grind being tackled and hit. So probably in the mid to late 70s, all this new equipment started coming into play.
Really interesting too, the way you think about it too. You have guys that have, I guess one of the things that we were talking about was when it comes to training, how did you guys, when you went into camp, were there guys, there had to be guys though in that era that were still not in shape, I would think, or were most guys pretty good?
No, most guys were in pretty bad shape. I'll be honest with you. Our starting right guard with the Rams was a guy named Joe Schiavelli, number 71. Now here it is, like 35 years later. I remember this. I don't know why. Jimmy had some synapses connect every now and then. Joe ran a pizza shop in Boston in the off season. So you can imagine a guy that owned and ran a pizza shop and coming back to training camp. It took Joe 3 weeks to get into shape at that time because guys were making the kind of money they're making back then. My first contract, I made $25,000. I was a second-round draft choice. So most guys even had other jobs in the offseason. Yeah. So late 70s, the worm began to turn where conditioning became absolutely critical if you wanted to keep your job.
Which leads me, I guess, to the biggest question, guys. And I know, Jimmy, you see it. You're there every day. Jaws, you see players a lot around the rinks too. And I'm just thinking back on my own career. But how can players overdo it now? Is there too much training that's going on? I mean, you see guys doing these crazy stretches, crazy stuff in the summer. And I wonder to myself, man, I'm a meat and potato guy. I'm a runner. I know that takes weight off me. I'll get down and do push-ups, sit-ups, much like the Bo Jackson or Herschel Walker program. But I'm old school that way. But now I see guys doing something, walking into games for the Flyers, and I'm like, man, that's going to help them all guys tonight. But whatever works, right?
Yeah. Well, you can tell I'm overtrained.
Yes.
That's you can tell I spent a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I think you can overtrain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, hockey is different than football and baseball. I mean, there are different ways that you have to train your body, different muscles. And Jimmy, you know that obviously better than anybody. There are certain areas you focus on, certain areas you don't worry about it. But I just think you can overtrain. And I've seen it with guys. Some guys get muscle bound. They get too big. I don't know if they're too big, too strong, but I think it tightens their body up. And I think that leads to injuries. I've always been a believer the elasticity of the body is more important. As a quarterback, I remember through high school and college, no, don't lift weights, you're going to get too big, you're going to lose the elasticity of your muscles. Now, I think of the way it has evolved, you can still work hard and still work the right muscles.
What about you, Jimmy? What do you see? I mean, you're in there. You see it every single day. You've been a top trainer at pro level for a long time. What do you see?
Again, I'll agree with Ron. I think you can overtrain. And I think what's going on in today's world is that overtraining and undervaluing rest. Rest is a powerful weapon. And I think there's a mental block in many athletes' head. Like, if I take that day off, I'm going to get weak. You're really not going to get weak. You're going to actually get stronger. And I also believe there's a lot of people misleading our athletes too, saying this way is the best way. Everybody critiques Tom Brady about strength, but his big thing is more mobility and elasticity, and it's kept him in the league. Now he's been injured, he's been banged up. There's been other players that followed his format, and but you see less injury with that. I think there's a really fine blend between the way you train and it's not a cookie cutter approach. And this is really for at the college level, at the high school level, or even pro level, that you cannot train. I'm not going to train a quarterback as I'm going to train an offensive lineman. I'm certainly not going to train him like I would do a linebacker. Everybody has a job to do, and they should be trained that way. The unique thing is we're all human, but the unique thing too is that we're all different. And you as a strength coach, you as an exercise physiologist, whoever you are, ought to get to know the player better inside, meaning that know what they are, do that functional assessment, and train them the right way, and strengthen up their weaknesses, but train them for that position.
Jimmy, I'd like to comment on something you said when you answered that question. And your body needs to rest. And, Otho Davis, remember the name? Otho Davis was the head athletic trainer with the Eagles during my playing days, and he was the head of the NATA, and Otho was not, because of the head of the NATA, we had every gimmick, gadget you could name it. We were like guinea pigs. Whatever device came out, Otho had it in the training room, had it in the locker room, so we tried everything. But he would always say, I would never question it because Dick Vermeil was the head coach, but Otho would say, you need more time off. You need more time off. Yeah, you're getting bigger, you're stronger, but you need to get a little time so your muscles can relax. So, and I believe that was true. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but Otho was a guy that was probably the most respected athletic trainer, in the 80s and the 90s. God rest his soul, he's passed away, but I learned so much around him of the training techniques, and I believe you can overtrain.
I think the other thing too, guys, and you find out who you are and what your body is all about, and you'll adjust to that, in terms of what works for you. I'll ask you one more question before we take a couple of questions from the crowd. Probably generic, put me on the spot here, Josh, but what's the most common injury that you see in football? If there's one that jumps out at you.
Right now, the one that gets the most attention is concussions.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, it's one that deserves the most attention. When I came in the league, I'm not making fun of this. Concussions are very, very serious. I'd get hit, not necessarily knocked out, but the trainer come out, Otho or Ron O'Neill or Dave Price, the guys that I work with. The first thing, how many fingers? 2. What's your wife's name? Liz. Are you okay? Some smelling salt. And I think all professional sports have made great progress and strides in making sure they're putting players not at risk when they go back on the field. So I think that is the number one, because that has a long-term effect on everybody, the concussion. So the league has made great strides, and all leagues have made great strides with that.
The last one to you, Jimmy, is has the NHL done a good job with concussion protocol? I mean, we hear that during the game. Sometimes we'll talk about the player went to the quiet room for a bit, but has it been satisfactory to you? I
think we've made great strides too. We really have. I mean, I think think we're just at the tip of the iceberg, what we know about concussions, and we're learning more and more about it. But we're not going to send an athlete out to play until, one, we feel like they're ready to go. But more so, are they ready to go? Do they feel comfortable? And can they pass the functional test? Can they pass all the cognitive tests that they need to pass? But the athlete, once they pass that and we feel that they're ready, you gotta sit down with the athlete too. I mean, I take it one step further. I usually, the athlete usually comes in, Chris, you've been in our, and the athlete will come in, they want to be stoic around their teammates. How you feel? And I feel great today, right? So I make a phone call about 4 or 5 o'clock when I speak to the wives or significant others. How's he acting at home? It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Because, he gets irritable, this, that, well, you're not ready to go yet. You're not ready to go. And it's irritability from little things, from driving, music, the lights.
Yeah. Don't call my wife.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, don't do that again.
You're irritable.
I've been there. I had concussions at the end of my career. I know I dealt with them, and really I never played again after that. So I know how detrimental they are to people and their life afterwards. So we're going to open up to some questions. We got a few minutes left here. Again, we appreciate Ron and Jimmy. And come on, let's go. I know we got some. Don't be shy. We got a free T-shirt giveaways. Come on up. Tell us your name again and ask your question.
I'm Travis. I was wondering, Jaws, what was the worst injury you had in your NFL career?
I had a broken leg. That was probably the most severe. And it's funny how you remember things. It actually broke the record I had. I had 116 consecutive starts, which was a record number of starts for an NFL quarterback at the time. And as I was in the pocket, Curtis Greer, defenseman with the then St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals actually played in St. Louis in that day. And snapped my leg. But there's a mentality you have. I still have a plate and 6 screws holding this leg together, and torn the ligaments on the inside. But it's funny, Otho Davis came out and he said, "Oh man, it's hurting." So they, you get on their shoulders and kind of walk off the field. And I started walking the sideline. I'm like, you know what? Maybe all right. I can put a little pressure on. He said, "I probably go in, take in the tunnel, in the training room, and take the scissors, cut the tape off." And my ankle kind of went, doop, just fell to the side. It was broken, but the only thing holding it together was the tape. I said, "I think I'm done." So that was the worst one, because when I saw my ankle go like that, it was somewhat like the Dak Prescott, a couple weeks ago when they showed that close up. You could see his foot was going the wrong way. Okay, that's not good. That's not supposed to be that way. So that was probably the worst injury I've had. I've got a screw here. I've got a screw here. I've broken most of my fingers. And when you play 17 years in the NFL, you get to have injuries. I had the concussions, but that's I hate to say that's the price you pay for the game, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It meant that much to me, and I think, Chris, you probably say the same way. There were bumps and bruises along the way, but you just love to play the game.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. I mean, you play we both played 10 years. I always say the year's 10. When you get over 10 years in any pro league, you're asking for trouble.
The average,
you're going to come out banged up.
Not to interrupt, because the average, this always shocks people. The average career in the NFL is 3.1 years. By the time these young men are in their early 20s, they're out of the game already. So at 3.1 years, think that, hey, what's your career going to be? I want to play professional football for the rest of my life. No, you're not. When you're 25, you get some other young guy coming in to take your job. So, it's a short career.
Yeah, and when we talk about football, I heard about your broken leg. Two of the most notorious leg breaks in NFL history were Joe Theismann and Alex Smith.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the great feel-good stories. I know he's a true football.
No question. Yeah.
Just to see that guy come back 2 weeks ago from what he went through. So, if you get a chance to see the Alex Smith or follow up on that story with Washington, it's a great story, and Theismann's more killed, right?
And actually, Dak Prescott was somewhat the same injury, but the thing about Alex Smith is he had like 13 surgeries after the broken leg, and he literally almost was flatlining on the operating table. I mean, he had to bring his wife in. 30 for 30 on ESPN has a great presentation on that, what he went through, and I literally got a little emotional when he went on the field a couple weeks ago, because kind of went through that. You see what this guy went through there. I got choked up about it. That people have no idea. You guys do because you live it. When guys break legs, break their shoulder. I mean, Steve Watterson now, who's down with the National Titans. When I broke my leg, I lived in the training room. People don't realize that. Every day I was there at 6 o'clock, including Saturday and Sunday. I had to train my leg to walk again. Walking in figure eights for an hour, walking back the other way, figure eight. So the athletic trainers, the time they put in to keep athletes healthy is just remarkable. So I applaud those people in that business, making sure that an athlete can go through that recovery. Because you see Alex, oh, he's doing great. You have no idea what he did to get back on the field.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And you know what, there's a multitude of stories you hear about guys coming back. Jimmy, you've seen them. I've seen them from other players. And that's really what people deal with. We have time for one more question. Anybody? Yep, this gentleman over here. Come on up. We'll get you that t-shirt up. There you go. You're gonna have a whole wardrobe. One over there.
Thank you. Hey, Ron, I just want to thank you for coming out and speaking with all of us tonight.
As my phone goes off.
As Jimmy said, a lot of athletes, when they are suspecting concussion, they want to be stoic and maybe not go to their athletic trainer or medical staff with potential concussion. So how can an athlete benefit their team from going to the athletic trainer and saying, hey, listen, my head really hurts, I'm seeing stars?
It's a great question. And I have found that, I'll say professional athletes, because I've been so long since I was in high school or college, and I'm still around professional athletes, and we're wired different. You don't want people to know that you may have a concussion. You're going to try to hide it. And you could probably bring 10 former hockey players up here, or football players, and they've all suffered concussions, and they hide it. They want to play. There's a mentality you develop. It's just part of your fiber, part of your fabric. You don't want to let your teammate down. Hey, Chris, I'm all right. I'll be back out. I'm just a shift, Yeah. But they shouldn't have. But there's that mentality, that brotherhood that you develop as a professional athlete, that you're not going to let your brother down. I'll be there for you. And I think we're just wired differently, and you want to be on the field and you want to play. And it was almost considered a weakness. What do you mean you can't go out there? I think now we're understanding that it's not a weakness. It's serious trouble if you suffer a concussion. But I just think it's the way we are.
You know what, really, there is, we've seen a lot of injuries. I know all of us have, they all manifest differently. Everybody reacts differently and handles the situation differently. But at the pro level, we're lucky. I know me personally, I was lucky to have Jim McCrossin with me over the years, trainers before him. And I know Jaws as well with a story with his friend. These guys are integral to what pro athletes do and the road that they have to travel to get there. But what Jaws said, 100% right. You wear it as a badge of honor almost. It's very much like military in a lot of ways. You don't want to let that guy down next to you, even if it's at the cost of your own physical well-being. That's pro sports, and that's camaraderie and the brotherhood that they go through.
Absolutely, Chris.
Jim McCrossin, Flyers head trainer, as always, thank you. We'll see you next week. The great Ron Jaworski, Jaws, we all know him, former superstar Eagles quarterback. Jaws, thanks for joining us. Thanks to a couple sponsors. I don't know my sheet, but we're going to go with, let's see if I can remember here. We got, of course, Total Turf. We got Recon.
Great place.
Energy.
And the Energy Bot. That's, of course, right. So if I missed anybody, I promise I'll get you twice next week. We will see you next Wednesday. It was great to have you all here as guests. And I'm Chris Therien, Ron Jaworski, Jim McCrossin. We'll see you next week. Thank you.